So, if you're not aware, we received some amazing news from the investigative reporter Gerardo. I cannot say his name right, so please do not come for me in the comments. I will block you because I already know I'm spelling it wrong, saying it wrong. Gerardo Zuniga. And he has disclosed that he heard from some of his resources in Mexico that Diogene has been arrested in the U.S. by the feds, basically, the feds, and is with the Interpol right now, preparing for extradition. But Gerardo Zuniga has been on the move, doing various interviews. He's interviewed with a lot of bloggers, and now he has since interviewed with the North Carolina beat. At first, I wasn't going to watch this interview because I thought, well, it's going to be all the same information we heard in the prior interview from lead attorney. However, he dropped some pretty huge bombshells in this interview that to me was it was even more heartbreaking, but also added a lot of confusion and a lot of questions as to the reliability of this information, what's true, what's not true. So I thought I'd bring it to you guys and see what you guys think. And also, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can attach those two interviews, the one from lead attorney and Gerald, into my description box after I do this live so that you can listen to both and see what I'm saying. Because if you really pay attention to detail, I feel like both interviews have some conflicting information. It could be just because there's a language barrier or just some information is not accurate or he's not remembering certain things accurately. I don't know. But let's get into what he said on this interview, and I will tell you if some of the information doesn't jive or is not consistent with the information that he said on the lead attorney's interview. So I'll kind of give you whatever is consistent, whatever is not. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about his experience, because he did talk in the lead attorney's interview. He didn't really give us any real details about his background, like what exactly is his experience being an investigative reporter. So he stated on this interview that he has been a reporter for 27 years, and he has been an investigative reporter or an investigator for about 6 years. So he does have a pretty lengthy amount of experience reporting and somewhat of some good amount of years investigating. So now that we've done that, let's get into some of the weird stuff, the timeline stuff. So during this interview, he stated some key details that wasn't discussed in lead attorney's interview. First and foremost, he speculates, in my opinion, that Shanquella had to have passed away between the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come in the chats and say, well, there's all these, the autopsy says 3 p.m. The police report says 5:57. Well, he says that, and this goes with what my theory was. My theory was that I believed this altercation happened around the morning hours. I'm thinking around 10 to 11 a.m. because you could see the sun was out. It seemed like it was morning time, but it had already been morning for quite some time. So I was thinking around 10, 11 o'clock. This is when this altercation happened, in my opinion. The autopsy says that Shanquella died 15 minutes after the injury. The reason why the autopsy said 3 p.m. based upon his opinion is because of misinformation that was given to the doctor, and the other medical team that was there regarding this whole situation. And number two, the doctor did not have all of the autopsy, or the coroner didn't have all the information, because when a coroner does an autopsy, not only does the coroner look at the body, if you have heard any type of criminal trial, the coroner will tell you that they will talk to the officer to find out what are the details of where the body was found, what are some information, what was in the police report, was, there any fights or whatever. They go to the crime scene sometimes to assess the crime scene. They don't just look at the body. They look at the information that's provided to them by the officer, whoever's involved, to see what other details can help them determine cause of death. So some of the information that the coroner received was incorrect because there was so many lies told. So the times cannot be exact. A lot of people are taking the times in the autopsy and the times in the police report to be the exact time Shanquella died. The answer to that is no one knows the exact time she died. All of these are just estimations, first and foremost. But what the autopsy does tell us is that she did die within 15 minutes of her injury. So whatever the time her injury was, only people that know what time this woman was injured was the people in that room, was Diogenes and the people that were recording and watching and standing idle while this girl was being injured, and Shanquella, who cannot speak for herself. So nobody really knows the exact time. So let me get that out the way because I already know that's going to be a huge confusion because I was confused as I was hearing this interview. What I gathered from all the different inconsistencies is that between 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. is when this altercation happened, and Shanquella died within 15 minutes after that injury. Another thing that he says in this interview, and I'm going to go over this in detail, but I just want to kind of flesh out some of the stuff first. Another thing he says is that there's only one video. He wanted to emphasize that because there's been this rumor about this other video showing Winter Donovan attacking Shanquella also. Well, he insists that that's not true. Who knows if he knows for sure? He's just a reporter. He gets his information from the police officers based upon his interview. He gets this information from the people that were on the scene. For example, these service providers, also known as maids, who were there. He's getting it from the district attorney and stuff like that. So that's where he's getting his information from. But based upon the information he's getting from his sources, he's saying there's one video, which is weird because that would be inconsistent with the statements that he said on Lead Attorney's Live, because on Lead Attorney's Live, he led the viewers to believe that there were two videos and that in the second video, it would show a woman intervening and stopping the fight. Well, in the interview with Gerald, he doesn't mention that at all. He just says there's one video, and that was the video that was released to the public. Now, if all of you have watched that video, you already know that that was not the complete video. Any person with any reasonableness or critical thinking can see that the beginning of the video was cut off and the end was cut off. So we didn't get the entire video. But Gerald asked, he said, is there an extended version of this video? And to try to at least get that clarification. And Gerardo says, no, there is no extended version. So that's, when I heard that, I was thinking maybe Gerardo doesn't know the full information. He is a reporter. He's only getting what is being given to him by, again, police officers who are investigating it and the prosecutor and other people. So I am going to use my own critical thinking to believe that there is an extended version of that video, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm making a humble opinion, but that is not what the investigative reporter said in this interview. He says there's only one video. He says there is no other video showing Winter Donovan attacking Shanquella. He doesn't say those exact words. He just says there is no other videos. He just says there's one video. So we can conclude that the video we saw, and a lot of people, and there were some people in my chat that really noticed that. You guys can go back and look at that video. The damage to Shanquella's neck and back happened when Diogenes grabbed her by the neck on that video and slammed her to the ground. That's when she sustained the fatal injuries. That's when her neck was cracked. That's when her back was cracked at that moment, because at that time, she never got up from that point on. And that is what Gerardo seems to, Gerardo, I cannot say this guy's name for anything. I'm going to say Mr. Zuniga seems to suggest is that once she fell to the ground, she never got back up from that point on, and that those causes were the direct causes of Diogenes grabbing her by the neck, slamming her on the ground. What I think happened with this whole allegation that there was this other video, I think there was somebody from within that group, maybe on Diogenes' side, somebody within Diogenes' family that wanted to try to steer the narrative away from her and put it on someone else, put it on Winter or someone else to get all of the heat off of her. That's what I really suggest. And of course, when this person talked to Gerald, this person would have known information to verify that they know the parties involved, because they do know the parties involved, but it doesn't mean the information that they were giving was truthful. You know what I mean? So The person who gave that information to Gerald obviously knows the people, but is clearly biased to Diogenes and was trying to pollute people's minds into trying to take the attention off of Diogenes. That's my opinion. I'm just giving my opinion. So that this thing caused confusion to me because I'm saying in one video, in one interview with lead attorney, he's saying there's two different videos. Now in this interview with Gerald, he's saying there's one video, and that was the video that was released. But any person who watches that video can tell that we didn't get the entire video, that there was the beginning cut off and there was an ending part cut off, and there was more that happened in that situation. So, okay, so let's get back to this beginning part. So he believes his theory, his estimation, again, there we do not know the exact cause of death. So you cannot just take, oh, the autopsy says 3 p.m. or the report says 5:57. It's not an exact time. They're all estimates. But in relation to the science, and this is my opinion, in relation to the science, the coroner is saying within whatever time she sustained that fatal neck and back injury, within 15 minutes of that, she would have died because she would have been able to she wouldn't be able to survive past that, okay? So that's all we can really take from the autopsy. Don't really rely so focused on the numbers and be so fixed on the numbers, because I see a lot of people in the comments like, no, she died at 3 p.m. No, she died at 5:57. You know, I think the takeaway is just to focus on the injuries, and that the coroner is saying within 15 minutes of those injuries is when she died, because there was no way she could have survived past that. So this investigator seems to believe that Shanquella actually died between 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. And the reason why he thinks that is because the maid, and they call her the service worker or whatever, but I'm going to say maid because it's clear for everybody else. The maid arrives at about after 12 p.m. She arrives after 12 p.m. to do her normal services of cleaning the hotel. Now let's just back up a little bit. Okay, in the morning, Shanquella is brutally attacked. She's slammed to the ground. She never gets up, right? According to the maid, and according to the suggestions of Gerardo, the group abandons Shanquella at that point when she doesn't get up. They leave the room. Now, in one part of the interview, Mr. Zuniga says she is found in the exact location where she landed and never got up. But then Gerald seems to suggest that she was in the bed. So, guys, I don't know which one it is. I'm just telling you both variations that was said. One part of the interview, the investigator says that Shanquella was found in this exact location where she laid after she was brutally attacked and could not get up from that point. And that was when we saw her fall, get grabbed by the neck, slammed to the ground. She didn't get up again, period. That was when she was basically dying from that point on. That's what he was saying in the interview, or assuming that happened. And so after she's brutally attacked, everybody leaves the room. They just leave her body, leave her there, and they go into another part of the villa. While they're in another part of the villa, after 12 p.m., the maid comes to start cleaning up, doing her regular services. When she goes into Shanquella's master bedroom, she notices, that Shanquella looks, very ill. She goes to touch Shanquella, and she says, when she allegedly told Gerardo that Shanquella was already hard, meaning she had already reached rigor mortis. Her body was already, that hard, cold texture. If you guys have ever touched a corpse before, that's how her body felt when the maid is saying, or the service worker told Gerardo Zuniga that when she touched Shanquella's body, her body was cold, was hard already. And I'm just saying that a layperson's, so I can make it clear to a layperson, it was hard, already reached rigor mortis. That means she had to have been deceased for quite some time, or at least some period of time, by the time the maid had arrived after 12 p.m. So the maid goes and tries to look for the people in the villa to let them know, hey, your friend looks like really ill or something's going on. You need to go do something. The maid, I don't know where Gerardo got this from, but Gerardo seems to think there were only 3 people in the room. All of us know that when we watched that video, there were at least 5 people. We heard a voice that was recording, that was a male voice, which people are believing that was Malik, but we don't know if that's true. Then we saw to the left of us, we saw a person with a beard. We know that Khalil has a beard. And then to the right, we saw some nails, like kind of manicured nails, and that was Winter's nails. And then we saw Dejanay and we saw Shanquella. That was 5 people that we can at least identify. But the investigator Zuniga insists that there were only 3 people in the room. He claims it was Dejanay, Khalil, and Winter Donovan. He doesn't count Shanquella. So again, he might be missing something. I don't even know if he got the names right because I don't know, guys. He claims there's 3 people in the room. A lot of people in the chat was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because we know that there's at least 5 people in that room. So again, that was another inconsistent thing that was questionable in the interview. So anywho, he says that the 3 people that were originally in the room during the fight returned back to the room where Shanquella was, and they make up this lie now, trying to pretend that it was alcohol poisoning. Like, oh my gosh, they act as though they didn't know why she was, not moving and stuff like that or responsive. And then they start fabricating this lie that it was alcohol poisoning. Now, this happened after 12 p.m. So that means between after 12 p.m. until 2:13, they were over here making up stories, delay. They didn't call the police, they didn't call the doctor until at least an hour to an hour and a half later, after the maid had already notified them that she had been ill or whatever. But she probably she was already deceased, guys, at this point, allegedly. That's what Zuniga is saying, y'all. And I think it's probably right too, because if the coroner is saying that based upon the injuries he's seen, that she would have died within 15 minutes after that, that's telling me she probably was already deceased. But let's get back to it. A lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, guys, but I'm just going to tell you what he says and you will make sense of it. Anywho, so I think between after that 12 p.m. when the maid notified them to 2:13, they're over here trying to figure out what story and try to get their story together. That's my theory, because there's this huge gap in time, like, that I was wondering what exactly were they doing for that whole entire hour after 12 p.m. when the maid had notified them. They didn't call until 2:13. So what were they doing? Making up stories, trying to figure out what they're going to do. And the other weird part about it is, where does the Nazir part fit in this whole thing? Was it between that hour and a half? Was that the time when he was rubbing her back and singing Summer Walker, and they're thinking about cooking food? That's what I'm saying. The story he says doesn't fit. Like, why would you be thinking about cooking food when this woman's body is hard? Anybody who could feel a person's body and see that they're hard or cold to the touch, that they are not alive. Like, I don't, guys, this story just gets more confusing by the day. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. Something is weird that they waited an hour and a half, or at least more. I'm just estimating the time. There was a huge gap where they didn't call the doctor until 2:13, when the maid notified them after 12 p.m. Questionable right there off the bat. There's something's weird. And just weird how they abandoned her body in the room, right? So anyways, like I said, the investigator, I don't know. I really don't agree with his number of 3 being in the room. He says Dejanay, Khalil, and Winter Donovan. I still stand by my thing, and I know a lot of you guys stand by your belief that Malik was in there recording, Khalil was in there, and Winter, and Dejanay, and Shanquella. So some of the stuff he said, you can look kind of, you have to be a critical thinker, because I see a lot of people in the chat that just believe every little thing. You have to be a critical thinker and kind of, some things that sound reasonable, take that as in consideration, and things that don't sound reasonable, put that on the side and say, I'm gonna put that on the side and see if anything confirms that until I even consider that to be a valid piece of evidence. But anyway, so then Winter Donovan calls the doctor to come over there. That's when the doctor comes, and allegedly the doctor tells everybody to leave the villa. They have to step outside of the villa. And she goes in, and also Red Cross staff go inside the villa. Everybody else has to stand outside. So that means all of the people involved, Cabo 6, are outside, and the law enforcement that come later on, they have to stand outside too, but they come later on down the line. But anyway, the doctor goes in, and she comes back out, and she's like, she needs to go to the hospital. They refuse. They pressure her to go back in there and do the multiple CPRs. Now, what is weird to me, is if this is true, that Shanquella was already passed away between the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. Again, these are all estimations. You cannot take anything within the report or the autopsy as the exact numbers because nobody knows the exact numbers. No, really nobody knows, to be honest. The only people that could know are the people involved. Okay, so anywho, they pressured the doctor to go in there and render CPR and do the IV and all the other stuff. So she goes back in there and does the multiple sets of CPR and so forth. Now that would have caused more severe injury to Shanquella because Shanquella's neck was already broke, and we saw the very moment, we witnessed the moment when her neck and her back was broke. There was a part in that video, the very end of it. If you watch it, you could see Diogenes grab her with force by the neck and slam her to the ground. That alone would have caused the injury. When I saw that before I even knew about the Winter Donovan video, I was like, that's where the that is where the injury occurred. That was my first initial belief. And then this distraction came trying to say there was this other video, which is, I believe it was somebody from Diogenes' camp. And I call her Diogenes, so don't be coming for me. I know I'm saying her name wrong. Anyway, from Diogenes' camp that was trying to distract the masses, and it worked. All of us fell for it. All of us was going for this fake tape that wasn't really out there. And I'm not going to believe it until I see it at this point, because the law enforcement, the Mexican authorities seem to suggest there isn't any tape at this point, and we're going to have to wait until Diogenes goes to court and gives a declaration if she chooses to do so. So the service worker told Gerardo Zuniga that the body was already hard when she touched the body. That means Shanquella already reached rigor mortis. There was no reviving her. So my question was during this whole interview was, how in the heck do we have this doctor who is supposed to be skilled and medically trained to identify a corpse or a deceased body? Why would she spend 3 hours conducting CPR and all these things on a body that's already hard and already reached rigor mortis? That's what I'm saying. There is so much unethical conduct and lies and just immoralities that occurred in this case that you just can't believe anybody in this case, because it doesn't make sense to me. I was like, this doctor committed all kinds of malpractice. How are you rendering CPR and trying to put an IV into a deceased body? No wonder she couldn't, because there's a part in the report where they said they tried unsuccessfully multiple times to give her an IV and they couldn't. Well, you can't give an IV to a deceased person. So it's like they let these Cabo 6 people, these Cabo 6 fake friends, pressure this doctor into doing this stuff, which is why I believe there had to have been some financial payment that was given to the doctor and the law enforcement, because it's like, to me, it doesn't even sound consistent with what I have seen out there researching the Mexican authorities and different things like that, how they usually operate out there. Usually they don't be so passive as they are in this case unless they're getting paid something. That's what I've been seeing in my research, and I've seen different interviews out there with Americans who have been arrested in Mexico, and they say, you know, unless you're paying a huge amount of money, like one man paid about $10,000 to get out of jail and to keep the officers away from him when he actually was released. He had to pay about another 17 grand. So I'm like, there had to have been some type of shady stuff going on with the doctor, because it's like, why are you in a house rendering aid? And then they had Red Cross in the house rendering aid to someone who's already deceased. So guys, that's what I'm saying. This interview did not clarify things for me. It just made me more confused and frustrated with the whole case. So the next part is, so Gerald was getting confused just like everybody else. Like, he was like, okay, so we have an autopsy saying that Shanquella died at 3 p.m. We have a report saying she died at 5:57. You're over here saying she died between 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. Make it make sense. So Gerardo was saying, well, he said the autopsy does not going to have the accurate time. It's not going to have the exact time when Shanquella passed away. And it's more than likely, it says 3 p.m. is because there was false information communicated to the doctor, to the officers, that same information was then communicated to the coroner. And so the coroner took the numbers that was given to him and then assessed that as the time of death. But in reality, it's really, he said the takeaway you really need to look at is that she passed away 15 minutes after the incident, after the injury. And the problem is just that the friends gave incorrect information to the doctor. That was really kind of what he said. So I just took it as, don't really look at all the numbers and the exact time frames. You have to look at estimations and just take the takeaway is that she died 15 minutes after her injury. That's really all we can take. We cannot really, at this point, decipher exact time of death because, as you can see, there's so many numbers that were thrown to us, and they're all not reliable at this point. Okay. So two separate police officers did investigations in this case. So there were the set of officers that came later on that night around 6:35, I believe it was, to do the investigation, to question the Cabo Six. Based on Zuniga, he claims that the officers didn't question the Cabo Six. It was the medical people there that were questioning them, and they told the medical staff that she had a lot of alcohol, and that basically the Cabo Six fled. Like they basically got their stuff and took off before the DA could even get involved to question the group. Or I think actually, sorry, I believe the police did question. Sorry, strike that, guys. The first set of police officers did question the group, but the Cabo Six just merely stated that it was alcohol poisoning. They just basically lied. And then they hurry up and fled out of Cabo before the district attorney could even question them, because the district attorney would have also questioned, but of course they took off and left. And then there was a second set of police officers who did the investigation of the crime scene. So there are two separate teams that did the investigation. That's one thing to clarify. Service worker found the body. Oh yeah, so I already went over that part. Let's see. So let's see. Officer and the people. So when the officers arrived, they weren't allowed to come in at first. They had to step outside with the Cabo Six, and only the doctor and Red Cross were inside. The police did take evidence though. So the police took the fingerprints of the people involved. That, because somebody was asking in the comments, well, even if they got fingerprints from Shanquella's body, how were they able to match it to anything if they don't have fingerprints? Well, Gerardo says that the police officers did take the fingerprints of the Cabo Six people. So he has that. Plus, they took evidence. They took evidence in the room, the bathroom, outside, and living room. And based upon Zuniga, he states that there was no evidence of a violent altercation happening in that house, which is inconsistent with what he said on the lead attorney's interview. On the lead attorney's interview, he stated that the prosecutor had, fingerprints on Shanquella's body, fingerprints that was found on Shanquella's body. He said there was blood evidence, there was sweat, all this stuff, right? That was during the lead attorney's interview. Well, during the interview with Gerald, he claims they took evidence of the entire pretty much villa, from the rooms, the bathrooms, to outside, to living room, and found no evidence of a violent altercation. So that's why I'm like, either this is inconsistent, or the officers were lying maybe on the report to say they didn't find anything that was violent. They probably lied on the report. And then maybe there was like he said, there was a second group, because he said there was two separate groups of officers that did investigations. So maybe the second team that was doing the investigation went back in and they were the one that got the other evidence. But guys, that part had me confused, because I'm like, well, you giving us two inconsistent statements here, sir. You telling us something on a lead attorney's and everything. You telling us something. It could be just a language barrier. I just took it to believe, when I tried to put both pieces of the test of his information together, I took it to believe that the first set of officers that came, who I believe was allegedly paid off by the Cabo Six, they went in there, did their investigation, and claimed there was no evidence of violent altercation, because they were trying to keep up this fake story that Shanquella died of alcohol poisoning. So that's my opinion. And then my second opinion is that when the second investigative group of officers came in to do the investigation, that's when they were able to find evidence of the blood, sweat, and other stuff. That's my opinion. I don't even know if it's true, because at this point, this guy's giving inconsistent statements to people, so I don't know what to believe with him, y'all. So at this point, yeah, so that's what I was saying. He was saying there was no signs from altercations, which I thought was weird. He also says during this time, forensics were done in the bedroom, living room, bathroom, outside, and no evidence of, like I said, any violence. He said, let me see. Oh, and at first, we already knew this part, that at first the group was insisting to treat Shanquella at the villa and not to take her to the hospital. But the very sad part is they already knew she was dead. That's the sad part. So they were insisting, don't treat her at the hospital. And it was probably because of their consciousness of guilt. They already knew she was dead. And the weird part is, why is the doctor over here wasting time doing 3 hours of aid? That's why I'm like, did she get paid to do that, to make it look like she was rendering aid? And also he was saying conducting the multiple CPR was just causing more injury to her neck and to her body, because especially when someone's injured in that magnitude, if they have a neck and back injury, you should not be moving that person, and you should not be doing CPR. That's going to make their injuries significantly worse and could further exacerbate the injuries. Now, at some point in time, that's when the doctor, even though the Cabo 6 is telling him, no, just treat her at the villa, eventually the doctor insists to call the ambulance. So that's when Donovan calls the ambulance, and then eventually Shanquella is declared deceased at 5:57. And again, we can't take these numbers to be the gospel, because we already know there's a lot of unethical conduct in this case with the doctor. She's shady and she lied, which is why she's being investigated. And the officers, who I believe these people were paid, in my opinion. That's just my humble opinion. And also the investigator suggests that in another interview with the lead attorney. He didn't talk about that so much during the interview with Gerald. Now, one of the questions Gerald asked was, well, how come the doctor didn't observe the bruising on her face and everything to basically determine that this was more than just alcohol poisoning? Well, he said that during the doctor's treatment, she didn't observe any bruising on Shanquella's face. And he talked to some other investigators, and they believe it's because of the color of Shanquella's skin, that, her skin obscured or didn't show the bruising. And they didn't notice the bruising until she was taken to the morgue and they conducted the autopsy. And then that's when they saw the bruising. But during treatment, because of the color of her skin, the doctor did not see the bruising. So that was pretty interesting to know. The cultural difference in this story is so interesting, because you can see how some things really affected the investigation, from how our culture is, where Black women wear wigs or bonnets, and how that affected the investigation because of the cultural difference, where the Mexican culture doesn't do that. So then they were interpreting Shanquella to be a man, and also from the treatment with Shanquella, where they couldn't observe the injuries because of the color of her skin. So you can see a lot of the cultural differences that had an impact on the investigation. So another thing that he clarified was that, do you guys remember when Nazir was on his live and he was claiming that he did CPR on Shanquella and all this stuff? Well, the investigator, based upon his source, he states that none of the friends did CPR. It was the doctor and the Red Cross staff members that did CPR. So that part was clarified. But again, don't take everything that these people say as 100% true. Just kind of take things, and you need to use critical thinking to say what is reasonable, what's not, what's been confirmed, what hasn't been confirmed. So, because as you can see, guys, from this story, we're getting so many different variations of what happened. You kind of just have to use your critical thinking and develop your own analysis of it until we can really get to the truth once the trial actually occurs. Or not the trial, sorry. There will not be a trial. There will not be a jury trial. There's only going to be 2 hearings in this case, because it's going to be in Mexico. Sorry, guys. I keep thinking America way, but no, there's not going to be a trial in Mexico. Just 2 hearings. But anyway. Now, another thing we talk about. So after this happened, the ambulance comes, all that stuff. The police officers do their investigation. They question the Cabo 6. And then they call the prosecutor over there. They call the DA's office. The DA does not question, of course, the Cabo 6, but then the Cabo 6, they leave after that. And then the authorities and everybody, they remove Shanquella's body from the villa at about 10 p.m. So that's when her body is removed from the villa and taken to the coroner and goes from there. So that was a key thing we learned, because before this interview we all thought that these people, we thought, it was really weird, guys. We all thought that, the doctor came, declared her deceased, and then the Cabo Six took off, flew off, went to a hotel near the airport, flew off, and flew away back to North Carolina, and Shanquella's body was just left there. And then a maid came later on and found her. That's what we thought at first, but that's not what actually happened. The maid found the body after, while they were actually still in the villa. They just left her body in the same position where she was left when she was slammed to the ground, allegedly. But again, it was confusing, guys, because then Gerald says at the end of the live that she was found in the bed. But that's what I'm saying. This girl's body was moved all over the place. That was another thing they talked about. So at some point in time, Shanquella's body is moved from the bedroom to the living room, where that's where they conduct the CPR. So her body is removed from the bedroom to the living room to conduct the CPR. But either way, this story that Gerardo Zuniga is giving us is inconsistent with what Nazir has said. That's what I'm saying. This guy is a complete liar. He cannot be trusted, in my opinion. He claimed when he got there that Shanquella's body was found in the game room. But Gerardo was saying her body was found by a maid after 12 p.m. while, the other Cabo folks were in another bedroom already, just left her body and found her in the same position she originally was in. But Nazir claims when he got there, she was in a game room. And then they were talking about cooking while he was singing Summer Walker. That's what I'm saying. There's a huge gap in time that they waited before they called the doctor. So in my opinion, they had to have known this girl was already deceased. So did they pay this doctor when she got there to just pretend to be administering CPR for all that time? And why didn't the doctor already declare her deceased when she arrived if she already had, her body was already hard? There's so many questions I have, guys. I don't know who to believe at this point. But yeah, so Nazir's story is just showing to be more inconsistent with the whole thing. I don't even know where his fake story fits in this whole thing, y'all. Let's see. What else did he say? Okay, so she moved. Oh yeah, I already talked about this, that he claims 3 people were in the room. She moved from the bedroom to the living room. Let's see. Okay, so he went into details about the whole beating of Shanquella, and he says that it was only Diogenes that attacked her, and that that part in the video where she's slammed by the neck and slammed to the ground. That's when Shanquella couldn't get up at that point. Even though she looked responsive, she wasn't able to get up. And he said that was the process in which she started dying. That's what his opinion was. But he's not a doctor, guys. I don't know where he's getting this information from. That could have just been his little opinion. Again, you got to take things and kind of analyze it for yourself to see what's true or what's not. But based on upon what he said and what we saw, it doesn't look like she got up again. And we just didn't get the full video. But he seems to say that based upon the sources that he's talking to police officers, informants of the police officers. He's also working with the prosecutor involved. He says he's getting this information from them. And those are the people that actually watched the entire videos. He only watched the one that was released in the public that we all seen. So he has not seen everything else that the investigators have seen. Let me see. Yeah, so he said she couldn't move after that. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, he wanted to emphasize that this is so sad that those group of people abandoned her body in the master bedroom. And it seemed that that's something that really did. If you look at him, that was something that was really concerning to him. And it's for all of us that they just abandoned her body. They didn't even try to get her help. They saw this girl never got up and just left and went about doing their own thing until the maid found her. Isn't that sick? Just abandoned her body. These people are even more callous and more evil than we already thought they were, basically. But even worse, like you don't even try. That's the problem, guys. They knew this girl didn't get up after she was brutally slammed, and they didn't try to get her emergency help at that time. That's the sad part about it, guys. They let this girl die. It sounds intentional to me because it's like, if she never got up, they should have already called the police at that point. It shouldn't have took the maid to have to find her. They should have called the doctor at the time that she never got up. But no, It seemed like some time had passed. They gone about doing their own little thing. They left her body in there, basically reaching rigor mortis at this point and getting hard, and that let the maid come and get them. So what were they doing in the other room? Were they conspiring and thinking of their story, or what were they doing? You know what I'm saying? This really is making it more sick and callous to me of what they were doing that whole time until the maid came and found. And what would they have done if the maid didn't find the body? Were they just gonna go fly out and leave? Like, this whole story just sounds even more sick and sinister. These evil people. And it's like Elise was in there too. We was over here trying to see, if she had some form of empathy, and you're just thinking, Elise is in there too, and this is the same woman who lost her sister the night before, and she didn't even try to help. It's just like the more stuff you hear, and I come to find out those three girls, Elise, Shanquella, and what's that girl's name, guys? Winter Donovan, and another girl that they're close with. They went to another Cabo trip just a couple months before that. And Shaquilla wasn't on that trip. Like I said, my whole theory has been this whole time that they weren't really friends like that. They were just acquaintances. And they knew of Shaquilla through Khalil. Khalil had already had a close friendship with them because he had been friends with them since 2012. And then he became good friends with Shaquilla in college. And I think he just invited her to that trip. Like everybody's saying, the mom is saying that he invited her to the trip. But I don't think those girls were really cool with her like that. You could just tell in the video how those three girls stayed clustered together at the dinner table while Shanquella was all the way on the other side. You could just tell. But the more information I find out for these people, you could tell that they just, man, this girl, she didn't have anybody there for her. That's just so sad. But just to clarify, guys, again, once more, the doctor was called at 2:13, over an hour and a half after the maid discovered her and notified them. There was so many hours that had passed from the incident when Shanquella was already slammed to that ground and had died. There was so many hours that had passed, meaning before the doctor came, or at least an hour or two had passed, in my opinion. I'm just estimating, guys. Before the maid had came in and found the body, a couple of hours, or at least an hour or so had passed before the maid came, in my humble opinion. And then another hour and a half passed before they called the police at before they called the doctor at 2:13, guys. Make it make sense. This is sick. And then you also have to know that the autopsy is only going to give you a range. It only gives you a range of when a person died, not the exact time. So people need to stop just taking the number and saying, oh, this is the exact time she died. Nobody knows, because again, these people lied so much. The coroner was going off of what these people were saying. So the really estimate is that she died 15 minutes after she was slammed to that ground and had the broken neck and back. That's what we can tell you. She died. That's what the coroner can tell you based upon the science. He's saying those injuries were so grave that she could not have even survived past 15 minutes after those injuries. That's basically what the coroner's saying. And he only got that 3 o'clock number, I think, is because that was the time the doctor arrived. So I think what he was assuming was that Shanquella got injured 15 minutes before the doctor arrived. I think that's what he was thinking when he did the autopsy, and he just took that number, that 3 o'clock, to mean, okay, that's the time she had to have died if she had the injury 15 minutes before the doctor arrived. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking that's probably what the autopsy was, the coroner was doing. But that's just a guess, guys. So the officers, like I said, they arrived at 6:35, and then they called the PGJE, that is the prosecutor, to inform them of what occurred. Then they sent the body to the morgue. The evidence was taken from the crime scene. The autopsy was done. And during the time when the autopsy was done, that's when, so first, when the officers talked to Cabo 6 at 6:35, that is when they were claiming the alcohol poisoning. But then the body was taken to the morgue and to get the autopsy. Now, before that was done, though, they did all the evidence and they were claiming there was no evidence of violence or whatever. So they were trying to cover this up, guys, which is why I think they were paid off. But the coroner goes and does the autopsy and he finds all the injuries, and he starts to think this has to have been some type of violent act, maybe a homicide, something like that. and they did the forensics. Then the video surfaced, and that's when they were able to confirm the death was a homicide. That's when they finally said, okay, this is not an accident. This was more than just alcohol poisoning. That's when they confirmed that it was a homicide. Let's see what else they said. Okay, so he was asking them, he said, have you guys been have the Mexican authorities been feeling any pressure from the U.S. to, prosecute this case, really, be aggressive in your prosecution? And he said, yes, there has been a lot of pressure on the Mexican officials to really heavily prosecute this case. And he said there could be some possible additional charges. And he said that the district attorney released a statement saying that there can possibly be charges for accomplice or omission of information for the others that were involved. So that's what he has so far. But he said, Zuniga also said that after the extradition, during the court hearing, when Dejanay gives her declaration, if she does decide to do so, and she provides any additional information during her declaration, then additional charges can be filed based upon the information she provides too. So they will see, but because there's been a lot of pressure, they are going to be looking into trying to see if they can file additional charges. But again, guys, they're not going to be charges for murder. They're going to be charged for the crimes that they are responsible for. So if they were an accomplice in this in any way, or if they provided false information to the authorities, they can be charged for that. Also, information that we should note is that he confirmed that the Mexican officials are working hand in hand with the FBI. So they're working as a team to get this case fully prosecuted. So that's a good thing that they're working together. And yeah, they're looking to investigate to see if there's any other charges. So that was the whole essence of what was discussed during the interview with Gerald. It just, to me, caused me to be a little bit more confused. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. I'm going to attach both interviews. You guys can listen to both and tell me what you think. Also, the interview made me feel even more sad and even more just devastated. I mean, I'm already devastated about this tragedy as it is, but to hear that after she was brutally beaten, all of these sick people left her body there in the room left her there to die. And then they go about doing their own little thing in the other parts of the villa as she's dying in the other room. That's so horrific, guys. And the maid had to find her like that. So it just made me question, but for the maid finding her body, what would they have done? Did they only call the doctor because the maid found her? And that's why they felt the pressure? But the other thing, too, I ask is, what were they doing that whole hour and a half or so? I don't know. I'm estimating, guys. Again, these are all estimations. I don't know how long they were sitting around. But what were they doing that huge amount of time between after 12 p.m. and 2:13 when they actually called the doctor? What were they doing that whole time frame between 12 p.m. or after 12 p.m. and 2:13 p.m.? What were they doing between that whole time frame? They didn't have any sense of urgency to get this girl medical treatment. So in my opinion, that sounds callous, it sounds intentional, and it sounds like an accomplice because they all worked together to do this. Nobody stepped up to call the police or call the emergency or line to get ambulance there to get this girl to a hospital. She could have been saved, possibly. I mean, she probably would have been paralyzed because those are severe injuries. If she did make it, she would have been paralyzed for the rest of her life, probably. I mean, she couldn't even move as it is when she was slammed to the ground. But just to hear how even worse the story gets, that they left this girl's body in that room, y'all. That is so horrific. I already know these girls and these people are evil, but that's just beyond imagination. You seen this girl didn't get up. You obviously knew she was gravely injured because she couldn't move. And she probably wasn't responding at that time. You just go and walk and leave her there, every single one of them. And but for the maid going to get them, then they try to pretend as though they care and start making up this little fake lie to the maid and make it look like, oh, she drank too much. And then Nazir, his story, when I heard from Zuniga again, his story does not make even more sense, y'all, because he was claiming up and down she's found in the game room. Then he claims she's found in the bathroom, in the toilet, over the toilet, right? He said that's where she was found, that she was found in the bathroom over the toilet. But the investigator is saying, based upon him talking to the service worker or maid, you can call her either way, service worker or maid, he said, based upon that, that she was found in the position where she was originally left when she was attacked. So Nazir is over here lying. He just lie. Like, what is the point with all these lies? And where did the Summer Walker come into all this, y'all? And the CPR that allegedly he didn't do. And then the other part is we had a nurse assistant there. How come she couldn't at least use her limited, abilities, some of her experience? And I acknowledge she's not a doctor, because we have some people in the comments saying ignorant stuff like, a nurse is not a doctor. Duh, we all know that. That's very obvious. But she has some form of medical training that she could have used, she could have checked to see if could find a pulse, stuff like that. So it's just like, come on, like there was no sense of urgency in this whole tragedy, y'all. They sat there and left that body, her body just sitting there. So guys, I don't know if this interview gave y'all any form of clarification, but hey, it's getting more confusing. But the good news is, all I can say is I'm happy because Dejanay was arrested last night, allegedly. I haven't been able to find it on a record confirming it, but Gerardo Zuniga has the inside scoop, y'all. He over there talking to the prosecutor and getting all the information from his sources. And I hear he's pretty good at what he does. So I'm going to say allegedly, because I don't know, I haven't confirmed it, but allegedly, based upon what Gerardo is saying, he says that she was arrested. If it's true, I'm happy because but worst case scenario, we don't know what's going to happen down the line. If it just ends up being Dejanay that gets prosecuted, we gotta just see. They gotta be charged for the crimes that they are responsible for, and can they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? That is the thing about going to court. You have to be able to prove your case. I know a lot of people, our heart is invested in this, but there is also a legal aspect to this, and there's an evidentiary aspect to this, and they have to be able to present and prove their case based upon the burden or whatever burden it is in Mexico. So let me know what y'all think. Yeah, I'm gonna say allegedly a lot, y'all. Allegedly this, allegedly that, alleged. Y'all might as well just call me alleged, because that's my nickname now. Yeah, it is Metro. Yeah, Dinah said it. That is the name of that's where he works, is Metro Polemics or whatever. Right. Libra says they all knew she was going to fight her. That's why they had their phones out. Exactly, Libra. This is sad, man. But the fact that they left her body there, y'all. Can you believe this? They left her body there for hours. This is so sad. I know, Patty, girl, lies upon lies. Nobody knows what to believe at this point. There are so many variations. That's what I'm saying. You have to be a critical thinker and be able to take information and look at it and assess it and say, does this sound credible? Does this sound reasonable? Is this person credible? Is he giving us consistent statements? And at this point, Gerardo's giving us all kinds of variations. So I don't know what to believe with this dude. I don't know. Okay. I don't know what to believe with him. Maybe, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because there is a language barrier. So, you never know if that could have caused confusion in the translation. I don't know. So I'm going to give him some leverage. It's understandable that there is that barrier in place. But at the same time, you have to just analyze this stuff and kind of just not believe every single detail. You just kind of have to use your critical thinking to find out what you think is valid, what you think isn't valid, and just wait for the court hearing and see if we can actually watch it. I hope we can actually watch it and actually hear what the exact evidence is, y'all, because all these variations is getting on my nerves. It is. So, yeah, you guys let me know what you guys think. All right, take care, y'all. Much love to you. Right, they flew back to the U.S., Dinah. This is just, after this story, man, I don't know. I'm just really questioning friendships at this point. One thing I would tell you, too, is not everybody wants to see your greatness. They don't want to accept your greatness. because they're not at a status of greatness. And because of that, you have to surround yourself with other successful people or people that are like-minded like you. Because when you're in an imbalanced situation, you come across some low life, low vibrational people like these folks. But, oh, let me show you guys this though. So, there is this video floating out here. Let me see if I can find it. Where did I find it? Okay, I know where it is. Showing that they had gone, these three girls that I told you they look like a clique, more and more evidence is coming out that is confirming it. Confirming it. They go on trips together.
Hi everyone. So I'm trying.
They go to trips together. They just have this long history of being together. And guys, Shanquella was not, not there. She's not. So I want to show you guys this. So this girl here, she was the other girl, allegedly. This is what I suspect, because there was supposed to be a fourth girl. I talked about this in another video. There was supposed to be a fourth girl that was supposed to go on this Cabo trip. And I suspect it was her because this is the fourth girl that is in their little clique. I told you they're a clique, right? So Dejanay, it's Dejanay. It's the three girls. Let's talk about the three girls. The three girls have a clique. They have like their own separate little clique too. We got Dejanay, Winter Donovan, and Elise. They're close friends already. But then you add the other individuals that we talked about before. Khalil's in that clique. Nazir's in the clique. We already showed you. I showed you the 2012 pictures. You got to go back to that video. And Malik's in the clique. But then the three girls also hang out too. And this girl here is also in that girl clique. So if you just take the guys out right now and you put the girls in there, add this fourth girl, she's in a clique with the four girls minus Shanquella. Shanquella's not in that clique with them, okay? But this girl was allegedly supposed to go. This is what I suspect this is the girl that was supposed to go with them on the Cabo trip. But for some reason, she didn't show up, okay? So, but they had gone to another trip to Cabo recently. And I'll play it here. I'll play just the version of it. But you'll notice Shanquella didn't go. Because Shanquella's not their friend, y'all. She's never been their friend. So I'm going to play this little clip of the Cabo trip that they went to. Or sorry, not Cabo. Why I keep saying Cabo? Cancun. Sorry, they went to a trip to Cancun together. And there won't be sound because of the music. Excuse that part, guy. Sorry, guys. That's in their video, so I'm sorry. Just ignore that part. But see, you can see that girl that was supposed to go on the Cabo trip allegedly. And then that's Dejanay. See all the girls right here. Shanquella's not in that group. Dejanay. Again, notice Shanquella was not supposed to be in this group, y'all. There's not going to be sound, guys, because they have copyright information in here. They just have a bunch of music that Unfortunately, we can't play because YouTube will strike the page and all that stuff, you know. And there is Winter Donovan there. But as you can see, they are a clique, and there was a fourth girl that's in that clique. With at least you put them together, and Shanquella is not. Shanquella was the oddball out. She was the outsider. I think she was more so introduced to these girls through Khalil. That's what I think. Even though they knew of each other from school, yes, they went to the same school, but that doesn't mean you hang out with people just because you go to the same school. I don't think they hung out at all. I think they just knew of Shanquella through Khalil. And it was Khalil who introduced them to Shanquella. And it probably was more so on this trip too, because she may have saw them in passing in school or whatever. And of course they knew of her because she hung out with Khalil. But girl, y'all know that Dejanay with her jealous self was already hating on Shanquella during college years too. Was just hating on her for many years. So I don't think this just started during the trip. I think this was many years of jealousy because she had to have been observing and knowing about Shanquella because Shanquella was good friends with Khalil. So she saw and noticed the success of Shanquella. And see, that's Elise on the right. And this is when we saw this one before. See, all of them together. Elise is right there. You see all the three, told you. They're all a clique. And there's that fourth girl who was just missing. So they're really close, y'all. All four right there. They are really close. And Shanquella was not a part of that group. There's so many different pieces of evidence out there that we'll start to see to show you that they were never really friends, period. The news outlets got it wrong. They were never friends. They were acquaintances. And Khalil was the one playing both sides. He knew these girls didn't like her. And, well, I think in particular it was really Dejanay that was just hating. And so you know how cliques roll, guys. If one person in the group doesn't like a person, then they will poison the rest of the group by saying, oh, I don't like such and such. And then the rest of the group is going to follow along and be like, okay, I don't like that person too. That's what my theory is that the other people just followed along. Well, if my friend doesn't like her, then I don't like her. You know what I mean? That's just what I think. And then these other girls didn't really have much going on in their life. We had Dejanay. She was a customer service rep, y'all. I don't really, the other girl, Elise was a nursing assistant, but who knows how she was doing that. And Elise came from a good childhood, too. I heard that she came from a good family. So I don't know why she was rolling with Mean Girl Winter Donovan and Mean Girl Dejanay. But they did grow up together as kids. And so as you grow up together, you kind of keep that bond no matter where you are in life. So I think that's kind of how it was. They grew up as kids dating back to 2012. So they kept up that bond from their childhood. So I think that's where that came from, of them continuing on in this long-term childhood friendship. But mind you, that was before they went to college. They were friends. So Shanquella just came in the picture during college when she meets and develops a friendship with Khalil. And I think it was Khalil was kind of like that gateway for how she kind of started knowing of the other people involved, but didn't establish any type of friendship with these people. And they didn't even go on any trips together except for her and Khalil going with her and her family. So that's why I'm telling you, this whole friendship thing was, people need to stop saying that whole friendship thing, because they were not friends, y'all. So I just wanted to show you that. We've been going over different little pieces of evidence of that throughout different videos. So you'll have to watch the other videos to put it all together, y'all. Sorry. This bits and pieces come very slow throughout the different time frames. But let me know what you guys think about this second interview. I'm going to go ahead and attach both interviews that Gerardo has done, and then y'all can make sense of it, because Make it make sense. All right, take care, guys. Have a good night.